Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the VitiGEOSS session. So this session is organized by the Horizon 2020 project VitiGEOSS, which is developing intelligence services for the wine sector. This is the third technical webinar that we're organizing, and this webinar will be focusing on climate services for vineyard adaptation. If you have any questions during the session, please, you can add them in the chat. And our first speaker today is Marta Otero, a researcher at the Applied Artificial Intelligence Unit at EURECAT. Marta, the floor is yours.
Sorry, can you hear me? I guess you can. Sorry, I wasn't able to speak. I am sharing the screen right now. I hope that you all can already see the presentation. I guess you could, so I'm going to start. So thank you very much for attending today. My name is Marta. I work as a researcher in EURECAT in the Applied Artificial Intelligence Unit. And I am going to start with the introduction of VitiGEOSS. And also after that, I am going to give the floor to Nuria to, well, we have prepared something, stay tuned. So with further ado, let's begin. If greenhouse gas emissions are not reduced in the short term, several authors suggest that by mid-century, agriculture could face real challenges in feeding the world's population. For example, changes in rainfall patterns, more desert areas exposed to erosion that maybe would no longer be useful for cultivation again, an increase of 1.5 Celsius degrees above the current temperature would cause great impact on the growth of current plant species. On one hand, displacing natural populations, and on the other hand, preventing current varieties from being cultivated without generating economic losses. So the effect of climate change on vine production would be reflected in the following phenomena, such as abnormal heat events occurring at the beginning of the year, bad break being anticipated with the consequent risk of losing production due to frost, recurrent droughts that compromise plant physiology and may destroy production, also new dynamics in pathogen infections, and finally changes in vineyard management. Let's take a look at the implication that each of these modifications could have on plant production. Temperature and precipitation are two meteorological variables whose anticipation has the greatest influence of plants. An increase in temperature has an impact on the acceleration of metabolic processes, which break plant dormancy and force an early start of the vegetative cycle. This forces farmers to fertilize earlier in the year when rainfall is still high and many nutrients are lost through leaching. In addition, temperature can be an extremely important factor in determining the total time of
Marta, we cannot hear you.
You are muted, Marta. Somehow you put mute on.
I didn't touch anything, sorry. I don't know where you begin to.
After
Just 10 seconds ago.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just skipping up to the next point because I don't want this to take longer. So rising temperatures, finally, rising temperatures also may influence the efficiency of carbon dioxide uptake from the atmosphere and consequently decrease the photosynthetic production. Whoa. Now, about bad breaks. Cold damage in wine growing areas is frequent during normally spring, especially in temperate regions. If the bud breaks earlier, the vines will face low temperatures sooner too. So although most vineyards are resistant to winter frosts, it has been proved that temperatures below 0 degrees Celsius during bud break are a limiting factor for production, but temperatures below -2 degrees Celsius may result in a significant yield loss. These new plant tissues contains less cellulose and are therefore more susceptible to freezing than the other mature plant tissues. If the first leaves are damaged and fall off, the plant will need to regenerate new leaves, investing more energy than necessary in vegetative growth and also to the detriment of fruit growth. About recurrent droughts, today both rain-fed and also irrigated vineyards can be found in Southern Europe, but with this scenario with an increasingly arid periods and less rainfall, it is expected that wine growers have to gradually switch on to an irrigation system, which may be subject to restrictions depending on the level of the reservoirs. In these extreme situations, farmers will be forced to withdraw the less profitable cultivars firstly, and also redirect the irrigation to other variable blocks or even varieties. The solutions to a drought scenario, farmers can adapt some kind of various irrigation water serving strategies, such, for example, debranching the vines to reduce evapotranspiration, conversion to drip irrigation system with regular maintenance, with control of cover crops, involving the application of pesticides for sure, and the final one, application of amendments in the soil to reduce transpiration too. All of this with the consequent large financial costs. Environmental disturbances also modulate the interaction between plants and microorganisms. Initially, just punctual increases in temperature may prevent infections of certain plant pathogens by exceeding their optimal growth temperature. But the problem arises when this temperature change occurs gradually, allowing acclimatization. As already mentioned, current climate models predict an increase in environmental temperatures, and the exposures of plant pathogens to these changing conditions may have particularly relevant consequences in terms of impact on pathogen-host interactions, changes in their biogeographical distribution areas, and also the regulation of different virulence genes, triggering the emergence of new pathogen or pest strains, or even host switching, leading to huge agricultural losses. And lastly, every environmental change inevitably will lead to a complete reorganization of business logistics. Farmers will need new information on harvesting and spraying dates in order to purchase raw materials, reduce emissions, and mobilize their workers, while considering also their welfare. Therefore, in 2019, the VitiGEOSS project was proposed to the European Commission to respond to these needs, creating an effective and sustainable end-to-end solution for wine growers. This project is expected to end in 2024, and it's been developed by 4 research centers, 3 case studies located in Spain, Italy, and Portugal, and also 2 companies. The VitiGEOSS intelligence services have developed different models among climatological, phenological, physiological, and also disease alerts, as well as a sustainable management tool aimed at optimizing resources. To calibrate these models, these services take data from the environment and also the crops using sensors, satellites, historical data, and also artificial intelligence, allowing to, first of all, increase production, saving money, of course, and improve the sustainability of wine production, always keeping in mind database decisions. So this is the introduction of the service. Probably we should keep the questions at the very end. Now I guess it's the turn of Andrea. Yes.
Thank you, Marta. So next we have Nuria, a researcher at the Barcelona Supercomputing Center. Nuria, please go ahead.
Thanks, Marta, for this introduction to the VitiGEOSS project, and Andrea for introducing me. So I will be presenting the weather and climate service that the Barcelona Supercomputing Center is providing for the VitiGEOSS project. So in the next slide, I have created, and I would like to show you the outline that I will be following during this presentation. So I will give a few examples, the reasons why we are providing this service, although Marta has already talked about the impact of the temperatures and precipitations for the wine production. But also I will be presenting the service that we are providing, and I will ask you for some help when talking about probabilistic forecasts, and then I will explain also the relation of our weather and climate service with other services in the VitiGEOSS platform. So in the next slide, I'm showing the life cycle of the grapevines. You will see that the interannual climate variability affects this life cycle. So for instance, the bud break can take place between March and April. It depends on the grape variety, but also it depends on the climate conditions that are affecting the plants during that time of the year. So I am also showing in the other side a piece of news talking about the predicted wine production for the 2022, and they highlight that this prediction was affected by climate change. This was because we suffered several heat waves and droughts, and this led to a poor harvest. So you see that I have talked about something in the temporal short time scale, like annual or seasonal variability, and in the other side we are talking about climate change that is a more long-term effect. So in the next slide I am showing a diagram that considers these temporal scales, and the relation with the decisions that winemakers need to take to protect and to have a good production, right? So from on one hand, you can see the weather forecast, the short-term forecast, that is a recurrent forecast that we can use in our daily tasks. And in the other extreme, we have the climate projections and the decadal forecast, that are forecasts that provide the climate conditions for the following years and even a century. In this, for this long-term forecast, there are decisions like when selecting the grape variety, for instance, that depends on the desired wine style, and it is a long-term decision, right? So in this case, this long-term climate forecast, decadal and climate projections can help the wine producers to choose the grape variety they want to grow and in a specific location. But in between, there are other climate predictions that are the subseasonal and the seasonal climate forecast that cover at intermediate time scales. So the subseasonal anticipates the climate conditions for the following weeks and months, and the seasonal from months to seasons. And they can help also the wine producers to in the decisions and the tasks they have to do, like the grow cycle management, as I have shown you earlier. So in the next slide, I want to give you more information on the service that we are developing for VitiGEOSS. That is an operational service that provides the weather forecast, the subseasonal climate forecast, and also the seasonal climate forecast. And we are providing this information for the 3 regions where the wine producers that are partners in the VitiGEOSS project are located: in Douro in Portugal, for Catalonia in Spain, and also in Campania in Italy. And for each type of forecast, we need to make use of a different model. So for this 2 more seasonal and subseasonal climate forecast, the type of information that we can deliver is different from the weather forecast. So instead of having or giving an exact expected value for a given instant, we provide an average over a week or month, and the information is presented as deviations from the normal conditions. And this information is also probabilistic to take into account the uncertainty on these predictions. So that's why I will later continue speaking about the service, but I would like now to talk about these probabilistic predictions. And for that reason, I would like to ask you for help. And Andrea, I don't know if you can share with us the questions that you have prepared. Okay, so here, if you can log into this site, the menti.com, you can access by entering this code, and you will see a couple of questions. You can also use this to add a code.
You can also find the code in the chat. So just enter either from your laptop or your phone on menti.com and insert this code. Let's wait for a few moments for some more people to connect. I think we can go to the first question. So the first question to help Nuria create a forecast is to pick a number from 1 to 6. Just you can randomly pick any of these numbers. Great, I think almost everyone has voted. So we have 32%, it's still changing. So we have 35% for number 4 and 31% for number 3. And the combined for 1 and 2 is 16%. A little bit more now. I think we can move on to the next question. So the next question, how is the temperature today in your location? Is it colder than normal, normal for the time of year, or is it hotter than normal? %65% of people have responded hotter than normal, or 64% now. 29% normal for the time of year, and 7% colder than normal. I will stop sharing now. Thank you for your help. Nuria, please go.
Yes, thank you, Andrea. I don't know. Thanks, Marta, for sharing the slides. So if we can move a couple of slides. Yes. So, well, I will try to explain you why I have asked you for to pick numbers. So in this, what I would try to do is, because we are used to know what a dice is and how it works, I thought that it would be the simplest way that I can think to talk about probabilities. And then what I would like to do is to group by groups, not so put together 1 and 2, 3 and 4, and 5 and 6, and I would like to say a statement about the result of a dice and try to do a translation on how we can interpret that results in climate. Remember, this is just a game or a way to explain these probabilistic results. So we cannot predict for sure the climate by rolling a dice or the weather. I suggest you also to take a look to this publication in the conversation journal that give a nice explanation on probabilities and how to use it. And then I would like, as I told you, by grouping the results of the dice in groups, then do this translation. So if we consider the lower numbers, 1 and 2 would be the results of the dice. But if we translate it to a climate sentence by considering, for instance, the temperature, we can say they are the colder than usual conditions, and so on. 3 and 4 would be temperatures as usual, and 5 and 6 hotter than usual. And then I would like in the next slide to show you the 3 types of predictions. The first one would be the persistence. The second one I have called it experience, and the third one would be the modeling. And we will try for each of these 3 types of predictions to guess the probabilities of each group of numbers. In the next slide, I wrote the statements for the persistence. So the dice would be like, if I roll the dice once and I get, for instance, a 6, I can think that the next time I roll the dice, I will have got a 6 too. Then that's why in the chart of the bar plots, the probability is 100% in the case to have a 5 or 6. So if we try to translate this to a climate statement, could be something as simple as if the weather doesn't change, it will remain the same. So this is a kind of risky type of prediction. So that's why the icon I choose is a crossing fingers. It's a kind of faith that the conditions are not going to change. It can work in some atmospheric conditions. For instance, if we think in a heat wave, it is a period of time like 4 or even a week of high temperature, right? So the first day you know that you are under a heat wave, you can think that the next day will be also a hot day. But then this works until it completely fails, because it will be one day that then the temperatures decrease, and then your forecast based on persistence is also failing. It can be catastrophic if you use it, for instance, at the end of summer, right? When if you are in a location like the Mediterranean, in which during summer the sea is warm, and then at the end of summer there are a lot of probabilities of convective precipitations, and then these type of predictions are not able to foresee when heavy rainfall will happen, right? So in the second case, is based on experience. No experience, that means that if I roll the dice many times and I check all the results, and I try to group in these three groups of numbers, I will see that all groups are equally probable. And then if we can do a similar thing, no, when in climate, so we can base our predictions in the experience. We can use, for instance, in situ data, so records from weather stations, and build our climatology. So it means to compute statistics from these records. So in this case, we can group the results of a time series of temperature in a given place, and then divide these observed precipitations in groups, and we will have the same result as in the dice. All three groups to be lower than usual conditions, as usual conditions, or higher than usual conditions. There will be all equal probable. So we have the 33% of probabilities. So for this case, is why I have asked you to pick a number. It was the first question. If I am right, more or less, the results are around 20% to people that has choose the 1 or 2. Is around percent people that has choose 3 or 4, and are again around 20% of the people that have chosen the 5 or 6. So in this case, probably it's because we are not enough people, or because we have a bias when picking the number. But in this case, the results haven't been equal probable for all the cases. So this lead me to think in other options when representing the creation of random numbers or doing a simulation like this. So in the next slide, we talk about modeling. So if I roll my dice many times and I discover that it has some defects or I don't know, maybe there is a face of the dice that is heavier than the others. Maybe my dice is a trick, it's a tricky dice, and then I can think how an algorithm can help me to simulate the expected results from my dice. And if we try to translate this to a climate statement, could be that I know the components of the Earth climate system because I have explored them. I can learn how they interact, and also I can build an algorithm or a model to try to simulate and run it every time and get all the information together in this model. So that's in the next slide. It's just to start talking about modeling. So I tell you that we know the components. So we know that we try to predict the conditions of the atmosphere, but we know that the atmosphere is influenced by the ocean or the sea ice extents, there's no cover, and also for the land status. And then each of these components provide a different amount of information. So this is the amount of information that these components provide are represented here as predictability. And we can see how this predictability changes as a function of time. So when we talk or we think on short-term weather forecast, the principal component giving us information is the atmosphere itself. So we know the initial conditions, and when the time increase and we go far from the initial conditions, the information that the atmosphere brings by itself decreases until some point around a week, that the information that the land brings to the system is even higher than the one brought by the atmosphere. So it could be interesting to add this component to our model when we try to do a prediction of the atmosphere conditions when we go far from this week. And then if we even consider to try to do a prediction 30 days far from the initial date, then is the ocean the one that also plays an important role bringing information to the system. So here, this is about the components, and in the next slide, I wanted to show you the equations, but because they are scary, I have shown here a picture, an illustration that is also scary, at least for me, because it represents many people doing the calculations by hand of the model output. So could be crazy. And nowadays, we are lucky to have computers and supercomputers. Even that we know the equations, we need to remember that the atmosphere is a chaotic system, and this means that the small errors in the initial conditions then can give different results from our models. So this means that in the next slide, I here show an example of that I need to run several times the same model to capture all the potential results from this model. And from all these solutions, what I can provide is probabilistic information, because there is not a unique solution that is the correct one. So that's why we have this probabilistic forecast. And in the next slide is a summary of all the post-processing that we need to follow to finally give a product to our users. So we need to put all these results together to create an ensemble, do temporal aggregations. We also increase the spatial resolution of the models and apply this bias adjustment to by comparing against observations. And we also do a quality assessment. So this means that we give information to the users on when the results of our model are shown to be accurate when comparing to past observations. And this all is the post-process, the technical part, but we also follow, in the next slide, we follow a co-design approach. This is thanks to the knowledge integration team that we have at the Barcelona Supercomputing Center that knows how to interact with users and do this knowledge exchange, the code development process and co-exploration. And for instance, from this process that we follow in VitiGEOSS, we learn from users which variables they need to do their work. For instance, they were requesting temperature, but they were not interested in wind speed in this case. So in the next slide, you will see also other steps that this team help us to do. For instance, doing mock-ups. So we did this design of 3 types of options, and the users selected the most convenient or easy to follow for them. We were also creating PDF documents with explanations on the results of the forecast, and we were sharing them with the users by email to interact with them. And also we did an app at the beginning of the project. Now this information is already available in the platform. And then we also, in the next slide, is a summary showing that when we update these all 3 types of forecast, the weather forecast is daily updated in a server. The subseasonal we updated weekly basis, and every month we update the seasonal forecast. We provide a bunch of variables that allows the platform or the users of this data to create their own graphs and their own models. And in the last slide, I am showing some of our colleagues in VitiGEOSS that are using this information. Don't know if we can go to the list. Thank you, Marta. For instance, in the disease management service that is also available in the VitiGEOSS platform, they use the short-term and the subseasonal forecast that we are providing as an input for their models. So and we are providing, apart from the weather and climate forecast itself, we derive other information like the disease management, or also the phenological monitoring and the crop weather demand by creating algorithms and showing the results on the platform, making them available for the users. So thanks a lot. I don't know, we will go for questions at the end, Andrea.
Yes, so if you have any questions, please add them to the chat, and we can have a look at them at the end. And thank you, Nuria, for the presentation. And next we have Jessica Snook, who is a project manager at eLIF, and will show us a VitiGEOSS platform.
Perfect. Can you
We
see my
can see
screen?
your screen, but not your camera.
For some reason, I can't either. Can you now?
That's great.
Okay, perfect. Welcome to the VitiGEOSS platform. I will just give you an example of what one of our users' accounts look like and what kind of information you can find in the VitiGEOSS platform. So as explained earlier by my colleagues, it is a combined effort of different companies and institutions that all come together in this one VitiGEOSS platform, which allows users to have more data available to make choices on. So the main part of that is this platform where everything comes together. So for example, for this one user, we have an overview of one of the farms that they are farming on, including their vineyards, their fields over here. And when logging in, it gives them a spatial overview of this one location that has been selected in the top right. There's a variety of data parameters that we support the farmer or the management consultant or anyone who's interested through the portal. Part of these data parameters are based on remote sensing data, so it's satellite based, and a lot of it is then the local weather stations are used as well to make the data as detailed as possible. So currently we're looking at the evapotranspiration data of last week's data set of this farmer, but we could also, for example, look at biomass production between those fields, the NDVI, so the vegetation index, the nitrogen content, crop water demand, so what we expect the crops to need in millimeters per week for the upcoming week. All those different data parameters that can be useful for making sustainable decisions for the upcoming weeks. When selecting one of the fields, currently we're looking at this one, Monte Greco 4. So that shows a little bit of information about the field below here. So the field properties, the distance between your rows, all of this basic information that the farmer has provided us with. But it also shows you the numbers of the data parameters for the week that has been selected. It goes into detail on the phenology. So when the farmer can put in when bud breaking finds place, when blooming has started for that field, to keep a log of that, but also for us to know that kind of information for all of the other parameters and details that we are linking to all of this. We have a disease management in here that was mentioned before as well, the risk of mildew. This will become especially very relevant in the upcoming weeks. April is usually the season for our users in Southern Europe, where this becomes very, very interesting to plan their possible fertilizers and anything around. And also has a sustainability tool where I see for this, that's the previous season, has not been filled in for this user. It gives the user an overview of all of the choices that have been made on management level and the impact that they have had in productivity, water usage, and all of that. The data is displayed in multiple ways. For example, we can have a look in detail for one field and one field alone for all of the data parameters, which it is loading now. So it provides the user with spatial data for all of the parameters. It compares the different parameters over a period of time. But for example, for the entire farm, we have, of course, the weather and climate data that my colleague just presented. So here we are looking at the accumulated precipitation on a sub-seasonal scale, but we can also move to seasonal and maybe the short wave radiation. And you can see that we're getting results now for the month of April, and the month of May will become certain, hopefully in the near future as well. So it's all of those different data sets that keep being updated by BSC when available and become then are displayed on the portal here. Besides this, we have the disease alert, as I showed you here as well in a wider overview. We have the phenology, so all of those actions happening, so the farmer can link those to the field and to their own personal information. It has more of a spatial overview displayed here as well. So this is the data that is laying beneath the basic map overview that I showed you at the beginning. Currently, of course, Southern Europe, the plants are starting to grow and become more interesting. With the past few weeks, there has been little variability in the field, but it's starting to show now. So throughout the season, we are able to see more differences, perhaps within the field on variability. So where we can see much more of an evapotranspiration effect or less biomass production, all of those little details and spatial differences that can help the farmer to make choices or to simply start checking a field more often. Becoming more and more relevant, especially for farmers that are moving towards more irrigated vineyards at the moment, and to keep a close look on their evapotranspiration and their deficit as well, to see what stress their vineyard experiences. Yeah, so all of that information we supply in the portal, and I would very much welcome you that if you have any interest or want to learn more about the portal to simply get in touch with us. We are always more than happy to fill you in and see where we can go from there.
Thank you, Jessica, for this overview. And to end this webinar, we have a Menti again. We'll continue on the same Menti that we were before. So if you have this open, please go to the same page and I'll share my screen. We just have a few questions for you. So we would like to know more about you, which of these roles characterize you, and you can select 2 or 3 of these. If you feel that you're within multiple groups, so we'll just wait for a moment. So we have many researchers here and data engineers and analysts. So most of the audience is researchers and Earth observation or climate service providers. So thank you. Let's move on to the next one. And do you use climate forecasts? The options are yes, I use them regularly or occasionally, or I've used them before, but I'm not using them currently. Or if you haven't used them before as well, let us know. So you could be using them in your daily activities or occasionally. So most of the audience have used the climate forecast regularly, while some people have used them occasionally or a few times before or never used them. Okay, thank you everyone for participating. And finally, which is the purpose for which you use these climate forecasts? Do you use it in your daily operations for decision making, or anything? So rainfall information I see here. For crop protection, it's great. Climate service, research, forestry. We have various answers here. Prioritizing activities. Providing services. Decision making. That's great. A few moments to add a few more answers. So we have also seasonal services here. Okay, thank you everyone. And Then the next question, if you have any questions for the speakers or any feedback, please add it here. I will stop sharing now. We don't have any questions in the chat right now. So I think we can close the session. I will leave the question box open on Menti. So if you have any questions or feedback, please feel free to add it there. And as Jessica says as well, thank you all for attending. And if you would like to know more, you can website and get in touch there. Thank you very much, everyone who attended, and to all the speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Bye. Thanks all.
Thank you. Bye.